Hey everybody, my name is Mark Gillespie. I'd like to welcome you today to this new channel called Mark of Innocence with Mark Gillespie. My team and I have put this channel together solely for the purpose to be a loud voice for those whose innocence has been taken away by evil in our justice system. You know, it's very important for us to want to help those that have been victimized, and we also want to fight the people in the systems that have been inflicting pain and suffering on so many people. You have to remember that if it can happen to them, it can definitely happen to you. So today I'd like to talk about a case that I just learned about, and it's very near and dear to my heart. I've just been recently speaking with someone that I just met. I learned a lot about her case, and I've been studying it. And I'll tell you what, it's touched my heart, and I know it will definitely touch your heart. If you could imagine the biblical story of David and Goliath, I'm going to tell you about a story that is just like David and Goliath. This is a case of David fighting Goliath, and it involves a beautiful young woman and mother by the name of Alicia Adams. And she has a 5-year-old daughter named Hazel. And this case does take place in Dakota County, Minnesota, which is just outside of Minneapolis. Allie is with me, and you'll be able to hear from her in just a few minutes. But what I want to do is I want to go through this case. I know a lot of you have heard about it. There's probably many more that haven't. But like I said, this case will definitely, as a parent especially, just pull at your heartstrings. So let's dive right into it. You know, this case actually started September 11th of 2018. And it actually happened when Hazel, who was 3 years old at the time, made an outcry of sexual abuse against her father. You know, you have to understand, I'm a private investigator. I'm a retired federal agent. I'm a forensic scientist. And I've conducted many cases in almost 37 years of my professional career involving child sexual abuse. And unfortunately, I'm very experienced in all aspects of these types of investigations. You know, my investigations, they resulted in convictions, as well as disproving allegations of abuse. And that's extremely important to understand while we get into the details of this case. You know, because we're dealing with children, these allegations, all allegations of sexual abuse, child abuse, they absolutely have to be taken seriously. And investigative methods involve a tremendous amount of collaboration expertise between the investigators, forensic medical experts, forensic psychologists, and therapists. They all play such an extremely important and vital role in getting to the bottom of an allegation of sexual abuse. Nobody wants to be labeled as a predator, as a sex offender. But I tell you what, a small child, even though we may not understand them all the times and they have limited mental capabilities, we have to figure out a way to understand them and either prove or disprove the allegations or the outcries that are made. Well, as I was reviewing this case, I have to tell you, it outraged me. And I am so outraged at the way the judge handled the case, law enforcement, child protective services, and supervised visitation services such as FamilyWise, which was a group in Minneapolis. So what I want to do with you right now is I want to actually share the timeline of significant events so you kind of get an idea as to how all the events of this case unfolded. So here we have it. On September 11th of 2018, Hazel made an outcry of sexual abuse by her father, and she was examined at Children's of Minnesota Emergency Department. And upon examination, the doctors concluded that Hazel was possibly sexually abused and recommended that Hazel not have any contact with her father. Then on September 12th, the very next day, Alicia reported the suspected abuse to CPS, and CPS then notified the Richmond Police Department. A forensic exam was scheduled for Hazel on October 5th. This is important. Talk about September 12th, where the abuse was reported to CPS, and then an exam, forensic exam, was scheduled about 3 weeks later, three and a half weeks later on October 5th. Well, on September 20th, Hazel was interviewed by Corner House interviewer, a man by the name of Bill Konkar. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but Bill is an ex-police officer. That interview actually was abruptly terminated by Mr. Konkar after 10 minutes and without any reason. And the interview was resumed the following day, September 21st. However, Hazel didn't make any disclosures during that interview. So in other words, she didn't really provide any information during that interview by Mr. Konkar. On September 25th, an officer from Richfield Police Department met with the father's attorney. And during that interview, the father denied any sexual abuse of Hazel. The father also stated that he had been sexually abused as a child. On September 28th, CPS closed their case a week before the forensic exam was to be conducted. As you'll recall, I said on October 5th. On October 3rd, Dad's attorney filed for sole legal and physical custody of Hazel. On October 5th, Hazel was forensically examined by a courthouse nurse by the name of Miss Voles, and their exam was found to be negative for sexual abuse, although a thickened hymen and protuberance of the anus were noted. The absence of findings on the genitourinary examination and the facts that Mrs. Adams had a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder and was hypervigilant does not exclude the possibility that Hazel has been sexually abused. In mid-October, Dad was granted 50-50 custody of Hazel, and Judge Tanya O'Brien, who is the presiding judge for the Dakota County 1st Judicial District, issued a verbal order to Alicia that prevented Alicia from taking Hazel to the doctor. Keep in mind, this is an acceptable practice in Minnesota, but imagine a judge telling a parent that they cannot seek medical treatment for their child. Well, for approximately 3 days, Hazel complained of severe itching in her genital area, and she had been scratching her crotch continuously. So on November 12th, Alicia took her to the doctor, where Hazel was diagnosed to have vaginitis. While at the doctor's office, the doctor told Alicia that he suspected that Hazel had been abused, and the matter was reported to the Apple Valley Police Department, and a detective was assigned to the investigation. On November 13th, police and a CPS social worker interviewed Hazel, and they reported that Hazel was either too scared to talk or was tired of talking about sexual questions, but she denied sexual abuse. The detective reported there was no evidence supporting the allegations and no charges were to be made, and the case was exceptionally cleared. CPS also made a determination that Hazel had not been sexually abused because she did not disclose abuse during her CPS interview and because her father denied abusing her during his interview with CPS and law enforcement. On November 15th, police came to Alicia's home and removed Hazel from Alicia and stated they were doing so because she violated the judge's order by taking Hazel to the doctor on November 12th. On November 20th, Dad was granted temporary sole physical custody of Hazel. A trial date for the custody hearing was scheduled for January of 2019, but rescheduled for March, then rescheduled for June. Then in November of 2019, court convened for only 1 day, and then it was reconvened on March 10th through March 12th of 2020. At the conclusion of the trial, the judge advised she would issue her verdict or the findings within 90 days, and on July 27th, Judge O'Brien issued her decision and awarded the father full sole legal physical custody of Hazel. She also instructed that Hazel would remain in therapy. Mrs. Marie Gabrielle Reed, who is a licensed psychologist, was hired by Alicia's family to examine this case and provide her expert opinion and testimony regarding the history of abuse and the allegations, and she was scheduled to testify at the November 2019 trial. She was scheduled to testify in March 2020 since the November trial had been moved to March of 2020. Dr. Reed's report was also provided to the guardian ad litem, who would incorporate Dr. Reed's report in her findings to the court. At the trial in March, Judge O'Brien essentially discredited Dr. Reed's expert report and cited the report as being too critical of those who treated and interviewed Hazel. Alicia was allowed supervised visitation by the judge's decree 2 times per week for 2 hours per session. However, Family Wise Services, which is the organization that provides supervised visitation, refused to allow Alicia to schedule visits with Hazel at their facility. As a result, it's important to note that Alicia has not seen Hazel since May 15th of 2019, when Hazel was removed by police from her home. You know, as I've explained a moment ago, I've got a number of issues with this case, and I'd like to kind of detail those with you one by one. First of all, her allegations were not properly investigated by law enforcement or Child Protective Services, and that's extremely important. Number two, the investigation by CPS was closed just days after the outcry was made and prior to the forensic exam of Hazel. Number three, CPS and law enforcement treated the father as though he was incapable of lying, and they showed no interest in investigating him. In fact, Allie ended up being investigated more than he did. Number four, in my opinion, forensic interviews were improperly and unprofessionally conducted. 5, guardian ad litem failed to represent Hazel fully and professionally. 6, and finally, the judge appeared biased against Allie from the beginning and disregarded and discredited expert testimony of Dr. Reed, as well as evidence that support the allegations of sexual abuse. So what we have here is a case where Allie and Hazel are literally fighting for their family future. They're fighting for their life. You know, they're fighting a system that's meant to protect them, yet they continue to be victimized by that very system. So my goal with recording is to accomplish a number of things. I'd like to make you aware of the legal battle that Allie is facing. I'd like to seek your support and assistance to share Allie's story and her fight. I'd like to bring attention to what I feel is an abuse of power and injustice exerted by Judge O'Brien. And I'd like to find an appellate attorney and a family law attorney that can assist Allie pro bono. So here's what you can do. It's just 3 things. Go to Allie's link tree described below to access a petition and her GoFundMe account. The petition is called Justice for 5-year-old Hazel, and the GoFundMe account is called Justice for Hazel. And please donate what you can. And finally, share her story, and this information. This is important, so please do this. You know, just like David was an underdog as he stood before Goliath, Allie is an underdog too. But with your help, Allie will put this Goliath on his back and become victorious. You know, I'm honored to have Allie here with me, and I know she wants to have a word with you. So listen to what she has to say.
Thank you so much, Mark, for reaching out and being so understanding and validating and encouraging that this fight remains steadfast. I may be David, but Goliath's gone down before, and it can happen again. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Allie. You'll be victorious. I know you will. You will defeat this Goliath, and you will soon be standing on top of his chest. Well, y'all, that's all for now. We will be following this case very closely, and we'll be providing you more information in the days ahead. If you don't mind, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to Mark of Innocence with Mark Gillespie. And you can also find my website at www.gillespieinvestigations.com. I can also be found on Facebook at Gillespie Forensics and Investigations. Y'all have a great day. It's been nice chatting with you. Be safe, and let's roll for justice. See you soon.